Missionary Flights International has been standing in the gap for missionaries in the Caribbean since the late 1950s, when our founder, Don Belden, was flying as the director for Youth for Christ throughout the Bahamas. And while we have many great testimonies and stories about how Missionary Flights has been standing in the gap over the years, probably my favorite picture still is from when Don Belden was standing on the wings of his twin Navion in Salt Cay in the Turks and Caicos, preaching the gospel. As the years have passed, we've certainly acquired our share of stories. Sometimes those stories mean a life saved physically or spiritually. Other times we are trusting God and doing the most good that we can do in a situation. Whether you have been there with us in prayer from decades past or just recently become acquainted with our ministry, you are a part of our story. I was curious to know just what some of the stories were that have made the most impact for our staff, our volunteers, and our affiliated missionaries. The following provide just a snapshot of how the Lord has used Missionary Flights.
One of the things I had to determine when I was president, when a pilot came in to interview, and of course our pilots have to raise their own support, and of course pilots like to fly airplanes, and most pilots like to get their hands on a DC-3. The nostalgia of the airplane, the history, all the things about the airplane. So I had to be careful when I interviewed, do they really want to just be a pilot and build some hours in the airplane, or do they have a servant's heart? And that's really what it takes at MFI, is a servant's heart, because, we fly the same route to Haiti all the time, back and forth. In fact, a few times we took off in Palm Beach, and for some reason we had to turn north to go up to northern Florida or somewhere. And even the controller said, are you sure you're going the right direction today? Because they get so used to us going to the southeast, getting to Haiti. So the flying part can get a little boring after a while, 9 or 10 hours in the air, the same route, back and forth. But that servant heart makes you do it.
I'd like to tell you about Don and Karen Davis. They're missionaries down in Haiti. They've been there for, probably 40 years now, I think. But one of the encouraging things that I have received from Karen is she gave me a nickname. My name is Joe Carabun. Let me start over. She came up with a nickname for me. My name is Joe Carabench, but she ended up in some email, I guess, writing to me as Joe Cares a Bunch. And the reason it encourages me is because that's really what we at MFI want to be able to do, to care about the missionaries a bunch. And hopefully, as all the things that we do for the missionaries, that's what they feel. They feel that we care about them, we care about their needs, we want to minister to them and uplift them. And so I just want to tell you that that's what we're all about, caring a bunch for these missionaries.
Now, in 2014, I had a very unique experience. And that is that I became very ill in Jamaica, and so much so that I wasn't able to travel out on a commercial flight. It became a real problem for my family to know exactly what to do about it, and I actually didn't want to leave Jamaica at all. I thought that I was going to die, and my friends and, I call them my family, my foster children there, tell me now that I told them where I want to be buried in Jamaica. But I was very sick. And some of my family had known about MFI and made some phone calls and made arrangements for one of the planes to come in and to take me out of Jamaica and bring me back to the U.S., where I was able to get proper medical care and, much to my surprise, actually recovered. And after 3 months, returned to Jamaica, where I continue to serve. And it is my hope and desire that God allows me to stay there for a long time yet.
So a few years ago, I had a flight down to Haiti and back, which is what we normally do. We fly cargo and passengers back and forth. And at the end of the day, we taxi the airplane back to the MFI hangar. And then as pilots, we kind of clean it up. We go through and we button the airplane up, we go through the cabin, just go through the seats, make sure nothing is left, that everything's kind of back as it's supposed to be. And as I was doing that, I noticed that a wallet had been left on the airplane. And we had flown back a few passengers that day, so I looked in the wallet, and sure enough, it was one of the passengers that we had flown back to Florida from Haiti. So now I had to go through the process of trying to figure out where this person was. The hangar's kind of locked up. It didn't appear that they even knew that they had left there wallet in the airplane. So got back inside, got on the computer and started looking around. Didn't have a phone number for this passenger, but we did have a phone number for the home office back in Missouri. So reached out to that. It was difficult. It was after hours. It was pretty late that evening, but was able to get a hold of the person back at the home office who had made the reservation for this passenger. And through some phone calls, we were able to get in contact with him. His name was Keith, and was able to find out that actually he and another passenger he had flown back with were at a local restaurant eating dinner.
One of my first flights on MFI, I realized that I left my billfold on it, and I think they actually called me, and we were already had been to our hotel and then at a restaurant, and Kevin actually delivered it to the restaurant, to me personally, and I'm like, how can you not like these peeps? And so Kev's been my favorite, even though I love giving him a hard time. You just need to keep him humble, that's my ministry to him. But that I think that sets MFI apart, because we used other flight businesses to bring us here from Port-au-Prince and things like that. I've never experienced anything like the partnership we have in ministry with flying like MFI. Nobody like them.
So Tom Cook has been here a few times, and he's with Project Hope. And him and his wife, Sally, are just awesome people. Sally came through on Tom's third trip here. For the first time, it was her first time. And Tom had been raving on the plane flight over from Haiti about John's spaghetti. And she landed, came over, and said, I have heard nothing today except about John's spaghetti from Tom. And I said, okay, well, you'll get to try some tonight. So after having dinner, serving dinner, and they were in the middle of it, I stopped by her table and asked how she liked the spaghetti. And she could not stop raving about it. So now she more understood where Tom was coming from, having talked about John's spaghetti all day on the flight back from Haiti. It was just really cute. Because she was like, I'm tired of hearing of this spaghetti, So John, you'll have to say something about Tom raving about your spaghetti.
We had 5 gentlemen from Project Hope coming back from Haiti. They had spent a week there, and we'd prepared spaghetti for them. And it comes with a salad, a really big salad. And right before I was finishing with the spaghetti, getting it plated up for them, ready to go, I turned around and the salad was gone. They had already eaten all the salad and were looking at me and, where's the spaghetti? We brought the spaghetti out, and it was silence in here. All you could hear was people eating. They absolutely loved the spaghetti. And several trips later, Tom from Project Hope always asked, hey, are you making spaghetti? So he really enjoys our spaghetti. And one of the trips, him and his wife got to have some as well, and she appreciated it. So if you're ever visiting, I guess you should ask for the spaghetti.
We have a guest here now, and she's been here for about a month. Her name is Karen, and she's from Jamaica. And her and I connected via email as if we've been friends for years. And we've just become like sisters, and we are sisters in Christ. So I think that, God put us together for a good reason. And I'm so happy that she got to spend some quality time with her family and also here at the park.
I think one reason that I love it here so much is because The other people in the park are people who have things in common with me. And this is very easy to make friends. It's a place to feel safe. It's a place to feel where you can recover and have great fellowship.
We found early on that we might leave some cargo behind for that missionary that we couldn't get on and had to come on the next flight, but you better not leave his mail bag behind because they look forward to that, just like anybody likes mail. And back in the early days when I started, there wasn't no emails or poor communication. No one had cell phones. To reach a missionary in Haiti was almost impossible. We used ham operators to do that. Every Monday afternoon and every Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, a standing appointment. And we do a relay to the ham operators in Haiti. They didn't all talk. We had one guy that would do the talking. We'd tell them what time we're coming, how the route was going. We're going to Port-au-Prince first or Cape Haitian. Any particulars about the flight. Maybe there was a big generator on that they should tell the missionary to get a forklift there or something. And so that was our means of communication. And eventually the emails came, and then things got better. Now missionaries order through Amazon just like we do, and everything's pretty much, much improved down there. So.
I help out here in the warehouse a lot, but my main function is communication with the missionaries. I kind of help with solving problems. I guess you could say I'm a detective for MFI. There's mysteries that come up every once in a while. We receive packages with improper addresses, with improper mission information. So I look for clues, try to find out where it came from and where it's supposed to go. Also receive emails asking about packages that are expected. They haven't arrived yet. They might say, we really need this down in Haiti. It's a medical piece of medical supply. And so we try to get some tracking information, watch for it, and expedite it on its way.
It was mentioned to me on the Dominican side that they've never seen that many trunks come out of customs that quickly, and so that's a huge part of what MFI does for missionaries. Also, as far as standing in the gap for the gospel, they do that very well as well. I remember one time specifically they brought in 900 chick tracts that were donated to our ministry. And we got those tracts distributed within 2 hours. And it was neat to see literally streets full of people reading the gospel at one time. And that's not possible without Missionary Flights International.
So John and I, my husband and I, were missionaries in the Dominican Republic. We moved there in 2018. Prior to moving there, I had learned from a friend at church here in Orlando that Missionary Flights has cargo delivered to the Dominican Republic and Haiti at different times of the month. And so where we moved to was near Barahona, Dominican Republic.
I first felt like we were the only missionaries within 100 miles because we were the only missionaries there at the time in that area. So when we first met the missionary flight plane in Barahona, there were all these other missionaries there, and it was like everyone was there talking and bonding, and really telling stories with each other, and we really became very close with all these people that were there. There were probably 10 different missionaries there. We got to see some of the big missionary teams that are down there, Children of the Nations, and then a lot of smaller teams like our mission at the time, 8% Ministry. And it was just such a bonding, and every time the plane landed, it was like Christmas. Everyone gets to get their packages in their mail, and it's just a really good feeling.
From a mama's heart, I'm so grateful for Missionary Flights International because I get to see my children open their Christmas presents from their grandparents and a birthday card, and that wouldn't be possible without people volunteering their time and donating to Missionary Flights International so that they could bring those things in for my kids. So I'm very grateful.
We have a mission, it's called Meds and Foods for Kids. Their primary function is medical. They have developed a special formula, and it's what we consider peanut butter, but it's a very nutritious, therapeutic product made basically from peanuts that has been given to literally starving kids. And every week they send out samples that go to several different facilities, one here in Florida, one in New York, and one we just did today for France, going over to France, and they go through, I guess, some very specific testing to make sure everything is as it's supposed to be.
When I first came out to MFI, I remember I kind of had this preconceived notion that a missionary was a certain kind of person, kind of like a type A personality, very talkative, outgoing. And at the time I wasn't really any of that. And when I came out here, I realized that there's pilots, mechanics, accountants, HR personnel, guys doing social media, front desk, receptionists. There's all sorts of people with all sorts of skill sets, all sorts of personalities out here that make missions work. And I remember when I was raising my support to come out here to be a pilot mechanic, I was at a missionary conference in California, and I met this couple. They had a booth right next to me, and they had like a pastor school down in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and they had a guy who was interested in going to their program but couldn't get from his house to the school, to their compound, and they were looking to see if they could get an electric wheelchair for this guy. Well, there's nowhere in Port-au-Prince, Haiti where you can just go and buy an electric wheelchair for a disabled person. That's not really how that works in that culture. They're kind of cast aside a little bit. And so I made some calls to our donations department here, and the warehouse guys and the logistics guys were able to get a hold of an electric wheelchair and get it on the plane. And so like 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a text from this missionary couple that I linked up with in California. And it's this video of this young man in a wheelchair, and she said it's the first time in his life that he was able to get from his home to the church compound on his own without someone having to come pick him up, and it was just life-changing for him. And I realized that my skill set, some of the background I had from working on airplanes and flying airplanes, transferred over onto the missions field, and that was being used, maybe in an indirect way, but nonetheless furthering the kingdom of God and making a difference down there.
There was a news anchor down in West Palm Beach who became a friend, and he told me once, he said, if you got any unique flights that you have coming up, let me know. I'll put a newsman on there with you, a cameraman, and we'll see what you're doing. I got a call from a little island called Walker's Key. It's out in the northern end of the Bahamas. Very small island, does have a little strip on it, and a lot of fishermen like to go to Walker's Key. That's a popular place. Well, they'd had a fire out on one of the islands. There's several little islands, and they had one big generator that ran the whole, all the electricity. And the fire had burned up their generator. They planned to get another one, but they hadn't gotten it yet, a newer one, but they were going to use the same old radiator off the original generator. Well, of course, the fire burned up the radiator. And the radiator is 8 feet tall, 5 feet wide, a foot thick. It's not just a little car radiator, it's a big thing. And they couldn't find any airplanes to get it in. The boats, there's still a lot of rough seas out there at that time of the year. And so there's a little runway, and I don't know exactly how long it is. It's not very long, less than 2,000 feet. And it's water on each end. If you come in short, you're in the water. If you go long, you're in the water. So We analyzed it and decided the DC-3 could do it. Of course, they only had the radiator. We weren't heavy. And so the two guys came from the news station. We set up a seat in the back for them and had the radiator tied down. And before we took off from West Palm, I went back and I said, you know, we're a missionary airplane and we always pray before we fly. So I want to pray with you guys and safe trip and so forth. So I did, I prayed, and we got out there and we circled the island a couple, 3 times just to kind of get our bearings. Of course, there's nobody on to talk to or anything like that, no tower. And so we lined up and we came in, touched right on the end, and we stopped, you know, I suppose 150 feet from the other end. It was tight. A little trouble turning around because of the trees were alongside, and the DC-3's got a 95-foot wingspan. We finally got back up there and got it positioned on the ramp and shut the engines down. As I came back through the airplane to open the door and let the 2 guys out and open the cargo door to get the radiator out, those 2 cameramen sitting there, they'd been taking pictures all the time, and they said, I want to say something. I said, what's that? He says, now I know why you pray.
Yeah, so it's really an encouragement to be able to pray with the passengers that we have on our flights, because they're not just random people. They are people that are been praying for maybe months to do this trip, to go minister in Haiti, and how is God going to use that trip and how are they going to use each person. And a lot of times they come back changed as well. So it's really cool to see some maturity and just testimonies of the passengers that go back and forth. And they have regular passengers that go back and forth, the missionaries that have been there for many years. It's an encouragement to me to see their faithfulness to the Lord.
I first learned about Missionary Flights International one Sunday morning about 5 years ago, when at church, Brent Killian, who is a former MFI pilot, and he's also our present cargo master, got up to give a brief report and give some information to the church members about MFI and what was going on, and told a little bit about our missionaries at the same time. First time I had heard, and I was amazed at the report that he gave and the information he gave. So not too long after that, I decided to go to MFI, come for a tour, and before I left, I filled out a volunteer application, and before you knew it, I was volunteering, helping at some of our special events.
Taking care of the property here at the hospitality center is quite a task. It's a big property. It's well maintained. We really need a lot of volunteers, and we really appreciate all the volunteers that come out and help us. One particular volunteer who's spending 3 or 4 months with us every year now, Jack Custa. He was here last year, and then he came back this year, and is just given us way more than 20, 30 hours a week. And the grounds really, Remark looks so much better than they did before he got here. It's because I was doing it. But it's great having him here, and I can't wait to get him back next year and even stay a little longer.
In-kind donations is truly a surprise from God every day. And many times when things come in, they are not in the appropriate form of what we need. And we have creative volunteers that are great to come up with new ideas. And this is one of the ideas I'd like to share with you. We received this size 3X shirt that would wrap up 3 people in Haiti and many more children. And she took it, and she has been able to convert these to little girl shorts. She's made skirts. We try to show Christ in everything we do, even on the logo on the pants. And these are for like older boys. That's why they're so long. But these are new clothes for them, and they're coming from a shirt that we couldn't have used any other way in Haiti. So we just praise the Lord for all that He surprises us with every day.
2007, a mission asked us to fly relief supplies to Nicaragua. The East Coast had been devastated by a major hurricane in the fall.
We partnered with the Samaritan's Purse, who had tents, tarps, and reverse osmosis systems stored in our hangar, and then they had some actually in other countries that we were able to borrow and relocate to Nicaragua.
And so that was the plan. And unfortunately, the mission organization got delayed getting their supplies out of their warehouse. We were delayed by several hours. And suddenly we were faced with landing after sunset in Puerto Cabeza, which had no lights. The tower had been damaged and was not operational at the time.
We went down there thinking we were dropping off a load to help out for one day and then fly back the next. And we ended up staying there 5 days, becoming an air bridge for the country of Nicaragua. So that was really a cool experience.
Got a call from the president of Missionary Flights saying that mission organization had just gotten word that a lot of the relief supplies were coming into Managua, which was on the opposite coast, and the bridges were out. They could not transport it by land, and they were going to start an air transfer with different airplanes, and wanted us to stay in the country for 5 days and help with that air transport from Managua to Puerto Cabeza.
Not only was Samaritan's Purse there was other mission organizations that were all helping out as well. Mission Aviation Fellowship, to name a couple. And then also the Nicaraguan military was there as well. And it was just really cool to be able to have a testimony to those guys. By the end of 5 days, you really get to know the military guys as well and some of the leaders there, and they were asking us questions. You just never know how God's going to use your experiences and sharing the love of Christ with others. So neat seeds to plant.
And it was just interesting how God worked that out, and we ended up spending 5 days. And when probably one of my best memories of some of the things I've done at Missionary Flights was that time we spent in flying in Nicaragua.
So the cool thing I didn't really realize when I came to Missionary Flights is that I was going to be working with other mission organizations as well. Not every day, but well, in reality it is every day, because the body of Christ all works together to get the gospel out. And obviously flying with different churches and missions in Haiti and Dominican Republic and the Bahamas is one aspect. Another aspect, which I didn't realize, was the aspect of training other future missionary pilots to serve with other organizations. And it just so happens that Samaritan's Purse has the same exact aircraft as us, and it's a large aircraft, the DC-3 turboprop. So we've been involved with them over the years, helping coordinate disaster relief, but also with training their future pilots. So just this week we had number 8, so this would be the 8th guy that I helped train to actually get their rating for the DC-3.
Somebody came up to me and says, Roger, our hangar doors aren't working. And so as a facilities manager, I said, okay, I'll take a look at it. And as I start taking it apart, I realized that it wasn't a big problem, but it was, to me, it gave an illustration. The keyway on the shaft of this massive gear that operates the hangar doors was completely destroyed. It was just totally sheared. Here's a piece of keyway, and the keyway that was sheared was about this long, this is 1/4 by 1/4 inch key stock. And it was amazing that this 1 inch piece of key stock stopped 8 tons of door from closing. And how important this piece of metal, there's nothing technological important about it, was key to moving these doors open and close. And if we can't open the doors, we can't get our airplanes out, it creates a lot of problems. I kind of looked at that and I said, that key stock is a good representation of us as believers. In the whole, if we look at ourselves from a universe perspective, we're less than a grain of sand. Yet God can use each of us in a very special way.
I'd like to tell you about a story of a couple in our main sending church from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. They have been supporting us for decades, ever since we started here about almost 26 years ago. But each time they contact us and ask us how things are going, it's not just how things are going at MFI, but they are wanting to pray specifically for each of our kids. It's the church that our kids kind of grew up in. It's important as supporters of MFI and each of the staff that you not only, we're grateful for your financial support, but praying for us is praying specifically for our family and our children. And I just want to encourage you to continue to do that.
Yeah, so of course our sending church has been in really good contact with us over the years, and we have a really close relationship with the pastors there. And I get a text every once in a while on a flight morning, early in the morning when we're leaving. They know every Tuesday and Thursday usually there's a good possibility that I'm flying, and one of the pastors or one of their family members will give us a text and say, I'm praying for you today. And it's just an encouragement to know that this isn't, we're not by ourselves, that we have a lot of people praying and supporting us and helping us make it through the day. Because it's not my strength, it's only going to work through God's strength for each day. We never know what we're going to run into. We might have bad weather, we might have fuel trucks break down, we might have an aircraft that might have a problem. So just praying for wisdom for us every day and making good decisions.
One thing I'd like to add in regards to how God has provided for me and my family throughout the years, there's a line in Oswald Chambers, it's one of my favorites, where he says, God orchestrates our circumstances to educate our faith. And I have to say, the manner in which God has provided our support over the years was more about growing my faith than anything else, and it definitely did that. And I've just come to appreciate it all the more, how God has done these things.
So things like that are become personal. Not just an airplane, not just flying the airplane, or not just working in the office and answer the telephone. You actually get a hands-on. And we've gotten to do a lot of that over the years with the missionaries.
Can you believe that it has been a year since our first virtual fundraiser? This video is intended for the same purpose. I hope that you've enjoyed hearing just some of the stories from our staff, our volunteers, and our affiliated missionaries. But remember, this is only a part of our story. Since building our hospitality park, we have had a greater opportunity to hear more stories of how the Lord has used missionary flights to stand in the gap for the advancement of the gospel. The Hospitality Center, RV spaces, and 4 island cottages have been completed, but for the first time in years, Missionary Flights has had to borrow money after the donor for last year's $700,000 match withdrew their pledge. We need your help more than ever as we finish fundraising for the Missionary Flights Hospitality Park so that we can be debt-free. If you would like to make a donation to Missionary Flights International, please feel free to make a donation online at missionaryflights.org/give. If you'd like to send Missionary Flights a check, you can send it to 3170 Airman's Drive in Fort Pierce, Florida. The zip code is 34946. And finally, if you'd like to call Missionary Flights and find out just where your gift is needed most, you can give us a call at 772-462-2395. Thank you for taking the time to watch part of our story. You really are a part of it. Missionary Flights International could not exist without the dedicated prayers and support of our donors, our volunteers, and our affiliated missionaries. We are so grateful to have this opportunity to partner with you as the Kingdom of God advances throughout the Caribbean. Bye-bye. Maybe you have a great story to share about how Missionary Flights has been able to stand in the gap for your ministry. I would love not only to read your story, but have the opportunity to share it. Please feel free to send your story to my email or give the MFI office a call and ask to speak with me.